So I finally went in to the neurologist, and he did what was called an EMG. I mean, still call it EMG. And oh my God, y'all, the EMG, the way that I could explain it best to you is, you know, voltmeters, when somebody has that box and it's a literal dials, and then you have the wires coming out, and then you have the little pinchers or whatever on the end, and you're checking the voltage of something that's electrical to see if it's hot or not. And they had a voltmeter, and that's exactly what they were doing, except instead of little pinchers on the end, they had needles. They had a needle. And the procedure for an EMG is they have to take that needle and poke it into your muscle. And they were checking all of mine. And they didn't just check it and put a needle in there, you know, because if you get a shot or something, you kind of know that little sting or whatever when it first goes in, but then you don't feel it, and then you can feel it coming out, but it's not like a big deal. This had an electrical shock to it. And the only thing that I can relate, that you might have any, that you could relate to, is, I don't know if you remember the movie, The Right Stuff, where the astronauts were being chosen for to be the astronauts that were going to go to the moon or wherever they were going to go. And they have this part in there where they've got a needle and they're checking the electrical pulse and reaction of one of the astronauts' hands. And they're putting the needle in the wrist and the hand and the fingertips and all that. And the astronaut's hand was just, and that's what was happening to me with every single muscle. And he started at my big toe, and he did all the other toes, and then he went up my foot, and there's a whole bunch of muscles. And he went up my leg and up my thighs and my pelvic area, and up my back and my ribs, my shoulders. There's a lot of muscles in the shoulder area and in my arms. And then he went up into my neck and into my face. I was crying. It was so painful. Women, you know what it feels like to be in labor. And if you had your babies naturally like I did, you know that at the very end, it is intensely painful when you're at, an 8, 9, 10. And it was that level. It was that level of pain where I was almost screaming in pain. And the doctor told me, I'm going to have compassion on you and not do it on the other side. I'm going to assume that whatever you've got it on both sides. And I was like relieved, but horrified at the same time. So I went back home. After that, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't function. It was like one of the worst things that had ever happened in my life happened with that EMG. And I ended up calling the Dr. Frankenstein, because, in that old black and white movie where they've got the Frankenstein on the gurney or the hospital bed, and he's cranks the bed up to go high, and then Frankenstein gets hit by lightning, and then he comes back down, and the doctor goes, "He's alive!" Well, that's that's sort of how I felt, like I was the bride of Frankenstein or something. But it really was. It was terrifying, and I